Hey, Brandon, can you hear the humidifier? I just realized how loud that was. Maybe, maybe not. Should I turn it off? Okay. Hello and welcome to the Century Guild Salon. Usually we keep saying we need to do a countdown. I think that's going to be our 2025 resolution. Because there's always the the first moments as people come in here. So we are going to talk today about the year 2024 and then also 2025. If you have questions or thoughts or anything, please put them in the chat. One thing that I want to mention is that we had a lot of storage spaces in California. We've moved our base back to Chicago, and in clearing out some of the storage spaces, we found things like, boxes of mixed books where there were 4 copies of one and 3 copies of another, and random oils and stuff like that. And so we've put all of that up on the website. I think they're still putting things up. I don't know, but the sale ends tomorrow. And Patreon members get 40% off of everything. I believe it's 20% is what the normal sale is. And then if you're a Patreon member, there's a code. Maybe Kat could put it in the chat. But yeah, you get 40% off of anything. We had one person that must be a reseller buy a ton of BPAL oils the other day, and it's just great stuff that was long out of print that we found random copies of. So, as I looked to see where the chat is, hi to Shazia, hi Andrew, hey guys. Melissa was asking me, what are you going to talk about? I'm like, it's pretty loose. It's just people that are friends that show up. So there you go. But yeah, so the thing that I was thinking, I got really, really behind this year on a lot of projects. And so the thing that I thought would be fun tonight, I'm getting the Anton Cedar book to the printer next week. It's done. We're just in the proofreading process. I literally have 1 page of text I need to write, and then we're swapping in a couple cleaned up images, things like that. And so my head is in that. My head is in completion. My head is in looking at the year that's passed and looking at what loose threads still need to be fixed or tied up, I guess I would say. And so, should I turn this on? Does that help? The thing, oh man, John and Forrest, hey guys. So the Kat, what was the first Kickstarter or the first thing we did in 2024? It feels like almost a year ago. I don't know what the first thing was. I'll tell you what I could do though. So I'll tell you what happened with the Anton Cedar book, which you'll get a kick out of. I'm gonna here, how do I do this? We're gonna get daring here, Kat. What do I do? How do I share my screen? How do I do this? Present. Do I want to share my whole screen? Window? Oh, there we go. Okay. Got it. Cat's giving me tips on the inside here. Uh-oh. Oh, man. Look at this. Here we go. So this is something kind of I think you'll find fun. I'll do this just so I can see as well what's going on here. So what happened is we were going to do the book on a series called The Animal and I don't know, man, my brain is fried. But it was all animals. And there were some really fantastic dragons and all kinds of incredible birds of prey, things like that. And the Kickstarter did so well that something that had been in my mind was just, oh, man, it's going to be not the definitive Anton Cedar book. And I was treating it a little bit like our paperbacks, where it's kind of like just trying to document stuff and get it out there. And then when the Kickstarter did so well, I felt my obligation level rise exponentially. And so I was like, it's got to be the definitive Anton Cedar book. So like we talked to Strasbourg University and got photographs of the murals that he did in the Institute of Zoology. I found someone that had incredible original glass plate negatives of what Strasbourg looked like in the 1890s. And then we went through and I talked about folios and what that meant, that Cedar was really a folio artist. Here's more Hogwartsian incredible stuff. So then I get into the Art Nouveau element. These files are huge, so it's just moving really slowly. There's some dinos, there's some drawings, there's a paragraph I need to write. Whoa, okay. So this is the stuff that I wasn't planning to put in, but as you look at this, you can understand why. My first Anton Cedar piece was this one right here. Someone had it at one of those weird O'Hare, like in a big, huge, facility where they have trade shows, one of those kind of cheapy antique show type things. And you can see from this enlargement there, just completely magical. And this would have been the late 90s, maybe 2000. It was definitely no later than 2001 that I got that. But that was my first exposure to Anton Cedar. And a lot of the things that he did were just unbelievable fantasy pieces. This is some things about there's a gnome king, and the reason that the Carpathian Mountains get a glow, they said, is because he's got his rose and crystal kingdom. And so there's some artworks for that. This one's my favorite one. It's his take on Cinderella. So people that pledged on the Kickstarter have no idea what they're in for. These things are just unbelievably gorgeous. And of course, then we've got the animals and the dragons and everything that everybody's expecting. But yeah, it was the fantasy stuff in the beginning. I'm going to close that out. There we go. So yeah, so that's what happened with Anton Cedar. That's why it took so long. There were a handful of pieces that I knew existed that I didn't own, that I had to go find and purchase. And then also just needing to really understand Anton Cedar. There's very little information about him on the internet. So I did need to really look into the Strasbourg archives where he taught. So, the point is the work is done. I know way more about Strasbourg than I ever imagined that I would. And the funny thing is so little of it gets used. When I was sitting down to write it, I realized, this is not obviously a book about Strasbourg or their history in the arts or even the school where Anton Cedar taught. He was really the first theorist in the only other person who did this was at the Glasgow School. But he was the first person to teach that idea that art and nature could combine to make decorative arts, meaning vases and tables and chairs. And so anyone that's an Art Nouveau fan takes that for granted. But in 1892, it was a very revolutionary idea. And so he really is, he's an important theorist. And I hope that this book gets him some attention in that regard. So I'm looking at our year here. Oh, okay. Is Animalia the first one? It was Hyacinth. That's a poster. The Hyacinth poster is kind of a funny story. I think Chandra told me I'm not supposed to tell stories like this, but she's not here. So we bought 3 Alphonse Mucha posters that were in extraordinary condition. And by extraordinary condition, I mean they looked like they were wrinkled and they presented poorly. But the thing that you look at when you're looking at vintage posters is the color. And so what happened is we were able to reline these posters. Posters are washed, deacidified, mounted onto acid-free paper, which is then mounted onto linen. That's how posters are generally preserved or presented. And in this case, it was just really old linen. So there was no damage to the poster. It was just a really thin linen that felt very like wrinkled clothes. So it was carefully removed and then rebacked, and it was mint condition. The silver was all immaculate. All of the colors were so great, and all of these posters were like that. But so the thing that happened is I wound up talking to the auctioneer. I was like, where did these come from? Like they must have been bought a long time ago. And this was the point that I think Chandra had said, don't say, is apparently it was some cocaine cowboy kind of guy down in Miami Beach that got arrested, and they took his panther and all that kind of shit. And he had a big art collection, and he had 3 Mucha posters. And so it's just kind of funny that it came from that environment. But so that was a really exciting thing to, see up on the wall, be able to get a great photograph of. And yeah, it was perfect condition. So that was Hyacinth, and then Animalia, which is going to be retitled because of all the fantasy stuff. And then the box set of Jugendstil. We did the third book. And so this is this turned out great. It's all 3 books. And this was kind of so we did things a little different. If you followed our stuff for a while, we did a series called The Orchid Garden. And on that one, I couldn't figure out, should I curate it or should it be everything? And we went with everything on the Orchid Garden books. And the reason was none of it is anywhere. None of it. And so I really felt an obligation to preserve the entirety of the illustration of that run of magazine. And with Jugendstil, what I really noticed in the first few years is, as opposed to Orchid Garden, 1919, it hits full throttle. And so there's a lot of art that is a little sketchier. It works as an illustration for the story, but you might not look at it in a book and say, wow, that's a great illustration. And I realized with Orchid Garden, it was less about preserving it as a singular decoration, each piece, than the way it interacted with the text. And so it wasn't pulling them out and saying, this is the artist. It was saying, this is the body of artists that were interacting with the writers. Because the writing and the art in Der Orchideengarten was really meshed. Whereas with Jugend, it was less the case. There was a lot of spot illustration that was just created as an isolated piece, or maybe there was a poem that someone illustrated. It's a lot more of a hodgepodge than the tightness that you had with the Orchid Garden. And so part of that is, okay, Kat just put these up. These are a good example. I think with, each of these, they have the art on the page and there's a caption that sells the image, but it's not connected to a story. It's, they're all just kind of put throughout there. So what we did with Jugend is we really carefully curated it. I really picked the artworks that were forward thinking. I avoided some of the more classical, leaned into things that were more on the edge of what was happening with Art Nouveau. And so it wound up then being, it fit into 3 volumes. And if you try to do this as one book, I feel like it would have been too big. And then the other thing is we're able to print the paperbacks in the US, and so the turnaround time is infinitely faster. And so at the end, we wound up doing this nice slipcase, and I feel really good about it. I like it a lot. And we're doing 1897 right now. I think there's like another week up on the Kickstarter. But yeah, I feel really good about those. It's I've just always loved the German Art Nouveau. The German and the Italian Art Nouveau have always been my real passion, so much more so than the French. And so I'm really glad that I was able to share that. I hope I hope you guys have read it. I really like that one. The next one that we did was we did our second Beautiful Macabre hardcover, so this was crazy how this worked out. This was the original Beautiful Macabre. And man, I leaned into the macabre on this. There's a lot of war posters. It's a very dark book. And it sold out. And it was like, should we reprint it? And I was like, I don't know. I don't know if it's we'd been doing so well with Le Pater, that I felt like this was kind of like these videos, to be honest. I'm just kind of riffing on it. And I thought if I thought about it a little more, I probably would lead a little more into the beautiful. And a little more of the romance, kind of dark sensuality, as opposed to just some of the ones that are a little edgelordy, like corpses and stuff, And so then we did, show you that in a second. So then we did this book, and it was substantially larger. We increased the page count a lot. It's all, where am I going here? So yeah, we went from this to this. This is a format I'm really fond of. And so this, I wasn't expecting it, sold out in a few months. which was fantastic. So we wound up going back and doing a second edition, which we did with black spine. It's exact same content. So if you have this in red, you do have this. We just made it black. Any subsequent printings will make black probably. I wanted to keep the red ones unique to people that got the first printing, just so it kind of felt special. But I love the black ones too. And I found out those will be here very, very soon, like next week. But it's going to, with the holidays and stuff, people might not, we still might not be shipping until January. But, and then the other thing that we're doing here, you know, we did, we did the Hyacinth poster and the, that's what I'm doing. Yeah, it just texted me. So, I got this idea from the H.P. Lovecraft Society. They do a small passport like this, and then when they have events or things, they'll make stamps. And I just always thought it was so cool, and I wanted to do something like that. And I did ask their permission to steal their idea. And I said, and I will give you credit anytime I talk about it. They're wonderful guys. H.P. Lovecraft Society is fantastic. H.P. Lovecraft Historical Society. That's how I found Troy, who did the music for Aurora and for Caligula. He scored their films. But so then we've got, you can put your stamps in there. We do all this. This is fun. We have a lot of fun with it. And then we wind up. So what we did is if you got the Zodiac. So are these rare collectible uncut sheets, Kat? So if you got the Jugendstil set, you get a Jugendstil stamp. And if you're in this Discord, you get one of these. Where's the focus plane? And then this is what you got if you got the Zodiac poster. Or maybe, does everybody get these? Or just the Zodiac people? I don't know. That's Kat and Chandra. My thing is design. Kat designed those stamps, though. I got to give her credit on that. But yeah, like you can see these ones for the Beautiful Macabre and for Le Pater. Oop. Is it focusing? I don't feel like it is. But yeah, I just think these are cool. In a perfect world, like we'd be doing stamps if we had events and things like that. So that's something that we've talked about, that we're trying to figure out how to enact. Discord is an event stamp for first 3-month members. I meant event, Cat, like if you came to the 35mm screening of Caligula in Chicago, like Ash did, maybe, and I think someone else did too. I can't barely remember that day. I remember Ash because he drove from St. Louis, but another guy was there. Who was there? Are you here? But yeah, I don't know. I really, 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 really want to do more with it, and we will keep doing more with it. I like it. I think it's cool. We've wanted to do it for years. It took forever to source this passport material. It took me almost 2 years to find this material. Yeah, it was a long story. It was a Guns N' Roses thing that I think I found it on. And Forest, yes, I've been to the shop. It's very, very cool. The back room is crazy. Mountains of every paper selection in the world you could want. It's like a designer's dream. And who's here? So John, Russell, Forrest. I said hi to Andrew and Deshazia. It's good to see you guys. And so what was after that? That's it. And then we're at the Jugendstil 4. So let's talk about 2025. So obviously, um, one thing that took up a lot of my time this past year was Caligula. We were in the Cannes Film Festival the year prior. We wound up getting into then the Fantastic Fest and Beyond Fest, and had those premieres. And then 2024 was when the movie came out to the world. I feel like I have a lot of life experience now that I suppose is common if you're in any kind of industry that is forward facing, like the entertainment industry. You know, a lot of things didn't go the way that I would have hoped. And the upside is that Malcolm and I are still on fantastic terms. Malcolm's not the biggest fan of the decisions that were made against my advisements and how the movie was taken out. And so a lot of that didn't go well. And so the thing that's pleasant about this is that 2025 is going to be a lot of 35 millimeter screenings. It's playing at like Harvard and Dartmouth, and then on the other side of the spectrum, it's playing in San Francisco and the Angelica East, and be in the Castro district. I think it's Castro Theater is what he's talking to. But anyway, so there's going to be a lot of 35 millimeter screenings. And that's kind of, I'm trying to get the wind back in the sails on this a little bit. I'm trying to be vague because everybody who works on the business side of this, if the, creative people create and then business people do business. And what I've learned is that the two things not quite converging is unfortunately very, very, very common. It's why companies like A24 get such a great reputation. And so, some of the fumbling that happened that might have removed Malcolm from the picture, at the end of the day, the investors gave me the room to make the movie the way I wanted to make it. And regardless of what happens from that point forward, the movie exists in the world. I mentioned Peaky Blinders on the Patreon. But I found out they had no advertising. That was all word of mouth. And it kind of reminded me a little bit like, the movie is out there. I'm really grateful to the investors. I'm grateful for the people who managed my side of it. And what happened after it left my hands, things like, people going uncredited in the liner notes of a disc. Like Dave McKean didn't get credited for his music. And that's not right. But, that's what the American DVD people did. There's a lot of stuff in the Australian book. Those guys were great. The Australian guys were really, really cool. I really liked them. But there's so much information in the book. It's a beautiful, big, it's a beautiful idea, but it's like, I fact checked it and I told you these things weren't right and you let it ride. And the design isn't great, and so I'm talking about these to kind of show behind the curtain a little bit that I'd like to think that when you approach something with massive integrity, I talked about the Anton Cedar at the beginning and really wanting that to be definitive. When I'd like to think that it's not an accident that we got invited to premiere at Cannes. I'd like to think that it's because quality rises to the top. I would like to believe that. I know a lot of things in the world prove that to not be true. I see it, in cinema and music all the time. But when you do really, really, really bleed into a piece of art, I think people see it. I think they do. I feel like the reason I've got the reputation I do is because of 25 years of not compromising. I remember before we had a gallery, we did an art show. This is actually a really nice memory. We did it at a nightclub in Chicago called Narcisse, and we were hanging all these Egon Schiele and Gustav Klimt lithographs that were kind of erotic drawing type things. And Jerry Suki owned it. Jerry is the owner of Gallery Fledermaus now, and a good friend. And we hung the art in the venue, and there was a man there, and I'd never met him before, but I knew him by reputation. His name was Bill Dosay. And Bill Dosay did PR for all of the galleries in the gallery district. He was just known as a tastemaker. He was just the guy. And I think I'd maybe seen him in passing. I'd never really interacted with him before this story I'm telling you. And he's in there watching us hang this show. And whoever I was hanging it, I walked in and there was something wrong with the dimensions. And the spacing in the horizontals were the same, but on the vertical, they were off a little bit. And it looked fine. It looked fine. And I said, I'm so sorry. We got to rehang this. And of course, the guy doing hanging was like, oh, come on. It looks great. It looks great. I was like, man, I'm sorry. It's not right. It's not like I really knew in the space the way that I wanted it to look. And the guy was like, okay. And he did it. And then, so this was my first real interaction then with Bill Dosay. He said, why did you do that? And I, in my head is like, does he think I'm high maintenance? I don't know. I don't know what the deal is. He said, why did you do that? And I said, because it wasn't right. And it needed to be perfect or something, to that effect. And he said, you're going to be very successful. And that was it. That was our interaction. And after that, we got very friendly. And he, he just, actually, I forgot this. This is what he said. He didn't say you're going to be very successful. He said, most people wouldn't do what you just did. And that's when he said, you're going to be very successful. And I didn't understand it at the time in the way that I do now as a 50-something-year-old man, which is that the world is full of good enough. The world is full of things that are, in some cases, great. But are they outstanding? And so I'm not saying this to pick on this designer. I'm saying it because it is an important example. In the Australian book, all the images I sent are scaled appropriately. The images that they took from a DVD that was an old DVD extra are all stretched horizontally. And so Malcolm McDowell's face looks like taffy. Those are all stretched and distorted. And I pointed out to them, your aspect ratio is off on these. And they didn't fix it. And Aaron pointed out to me, he's like, man, look at everybody I know, the unboxing videos, people are losing their minds saying this is one of the best things they've ever seen. And he said, a lot of people just don't tune in to that the way you do. And he said it in a sense of like, take some comfort in knowing that people are enjoying it. And I do. But it's not what I would do. And I have to say to anybody who's an artist, a creative, anything, I don't care if you're making food for your cats. Like if you're going to do it, I feel like it's just a decision. Not that it's that much more work. It's just a decision that it's better off for it to take a little bit more time and be bringing more into the world that is worth someone's time. And so when I see something where someone didn't do that, the big debacle around the American DVD release is they wanted to put the 1980 version on there, and then what they released turned out to be the UK cut. And I told them they didn't have the US release, but they did it anyway. Because I don't know, did they not believe me? They created a narrative in their head that it was an edit that was done specifically for Boston that was based on nothing. It's not real. It's not true. And I think it's because it sounds good. And then at the end of the day, you go home from work, it's 5:01, you got to go. But that's not the mindset that sets the world on fire. That's not the mindset that inspires people. No one's going to look at these releases and say, wow, that's what, that's what a release should be. This was perfect. So the thing I focus on is the movie. With what we had and the budget and all of that, man, we went so far above and beyond. We got invited to Cannes. Malcolm McDowell and Helen Mirren both publicly talked about this movie that they would never in a million years go near. And I'm not saying this to boast about what I'm doing. I'm saying it to kind of shake people. If any of you watching this are, on that edge, like, dear God, take the extra. Yeah, Deshasia. Sorry, my tongue. I'm so thirsty here. A little sinusy. But yeah, there's someone had a book thing on Kickstarter that I went to go pledge, and they talked about a sneak peek of the book, and they put PEAK, and I changed my mind. I was like, if you don't know how to spell sneak peek, I don't know that I can buy a book from you. So that's kind of a bit of a ramble, bit of a rant. But the point is that, kind of on this insider behind the curtain thing, I talk to Malcolm's best friend, Mike, almost every day. He's the guy that created the poster design for Clockwork Orange and did the 2001 marketing. And he's a genius, and he's not given up. He's like, I want Caligula to get out there as much as we can. And so there are going to be a lot of things happening next year that'll be kind of more homegrown. And the other thing too is like the stuff with the industry. If I complain about it to anybody in the industry, they say, whoa, let me tell you a story. And theirs is a million times worse than mine. So I don't particularly have any resentment towards anyone. The investors let them do their job, all of these territories, all these countries. And I wanted to have a little more control in that. And then I realized, you know what? The freedom that they gave me to do what I did is why I was so successful. And so for them to extend that courtesy to other people, I was like, oh, damn, at the end of the day, that is respectable and that is admirable. And so I really, the investors were great. The investors were really good on this. And I'm really, there was some friction in times with arguments, but I hope I'm at least vocal enough with them to have made sure that they understood that I really do respect the way that they did things. And I'm proud of the movie. It's not an easy watch, but it's worth a couple reviews. Anyway, yeah, so that's kind of my tangent, just on, focus on detail. This is another thing, and then I'll get to a couple questions, but all of these books, we take these pictures 98% of the time. There's times where somebody that I know owns something, or if I can, borrow something or have someone that's bought something that I didn't get a good scan of. But the point is, we're in control of the imaging. And there's a crispness to our books that I know that you don't see in other books. I know, because I'll buy other poster books and I'll look at ours and I'm like, oh man, these people just, they just plug the image in and it's what they've got. I am looking at how it's going to print on the paper stock that we're using, all of that. And it's not stressful to me. It doesn't feel like I'm caught in the grip of my, ADHD or something. It's just, it's not hard to do. It's not hard to do. There's a couple questions Kat is pointing out to me. We have 20 minutes. What should I do first here? Here's what I'm going to say really quickly. I didn't get to talk about the collection thing leading into telling you what our first thing of January is going to be. I'm going to do these questions first. We'll see if we have time. Will a version of the Temple of Medusa project be going forward? Man, all these sore spots, Forrest. It's so that wasn't supposed to be my project. And so there's only so much that I could do with it. And I think that the real stumbling block is that we started getting the artists to send us the images, and the people who sent art to us to photograph, I got great shots of. The people who were supplying images, they were just, and half of them were not usable in any form. The colors were so off. Resolution was terrible. Just a lot wrong with it. And everybody was really nice, but it was like herding cats. It was just really, really, really hard. And so it was something that I wasn't supposed to be solely managing, but it became such a complicated project that I can't fault that it wasn't something that could have really been wrangled. And really beyond that, at the end of the day, I don't know if it was solvable, because you can't, what are you going to do, send photographers to everybody's house? Like it was hard. So I think it's a great idea. I would like to still do it, but I'm not going to do it. I'm going to put Chandra on the spot. That's a Chandra project. And she's been very, very, very busy because she runs all of these campaigns and keeps the whole company moving with that. But I think that the way that we would approach that moving forward is as a more historical book. It may happen, it may not happen. I don't know. You'd have to ask Chandra. I'd love to see it. I will help do it. But we were trying to treat it like I was going to be doing things like Caligula. And then this would kind of be like a virtual gallery type situation, since, that didn't exist anymore. And it just didn't translate well. It didn't work well for a number of reasons. I kind of rambled there. Andrew, you got the Australian one. Okay, great. Yes, streaming is always not great for 4K though, is it? So word on the street is that the disc quality for the Australian Blu-ray set is not only comparable or slightly better, but that there is a problem with the 4K disc that's being replaced. I don't know if you know about this. And that I have insider information about how they're doing the new disc. And it's going to become vastly superior. So the Australian set is the one to get. And write to them about a replacement disc. Holy cow. All right. Medusa, Australian, fast versus good. One thing, this happened, it might have been during Le Pater. Adam Jones said, because everyone's always like, when's the next Tool album? He said, it's not good when it's done. It's done when it's good. I just love that idea. I love that sentiment. I don't think you are summoned to toot your own horn. I've got a collection of horns. John. So I want to add that when you see that something is wrong, you have always delivered that feedback with respect and understanding. Johnny Lipashak, perhaps my greatest victim during Caligula, because if anything wasn't right, he had to redo it. John, you were amazing and incredibly dedicated. I think that is a piece of your success and a huge lesson artists can hold closely when interacting with others and themselves. That's very nice for you to say that, not just for me, but for everybody. Not a victim. I'm not a victim. I have autonomy. But yeah, that's a great example, though. I think so. For me, I'm very abrasive. I listen to a lot of Jerky Boys. I enjoy the challenge. Aaron and I argue all the time, but he wants things to be great. I want things to be great. And so it's never personal. It's always, I was listening to an interview with Alex Van Halen last night, and he was talking about how argumentative the band always was. And he said, but I was raised that way. He's like, our family were musicians, and the arguments to make something better always made it great. And that might have not been a fun band to be in for some people, but it's like, I do get that it's, I mean, in their case, it's, you introduce drugs and it's dysfunctional, but I'll use Aaron as an example. I love Aaron so much and I trust him so much that if he believes in something enough and it withstands that argument, whoever wins was right. There's never been, I don't think, a situation, and he really was the co-creator on all the Caligula stuff. I don't think there was ever a situation where one of us just capitulated. It was always either, okay, yeah, I see your point. That is great. Or it's a lateral move. I'm going to let this go. And there were ones I did and ones he did, where it was like, there were things in the editing. There was like, I remember a scene that I went in and redid. And he said, I can't say it's better, but it's not worse. If that's the way you want it, I'm cool with that. And vice versa. Same thing. I'm like, what I would do with this scene is a little different, but what you did is great. So, and then when it comes to these books and things like that, I do that to myself all the time. And so then the thing is, when John did the VFX for Caligula, and so John, when you were working on something, and I would be like, man, look at this, look at this, look at this. I have to say, to his credit, as soon as I would point it out to him, it wasn't, oh, this guy's a pain in the ass. It was, oh, shit, you're right. I need it to be better. And think of the contrast with what I was saying about things I was pointing out to other people, where my reputation in those quarters is, oh, I was told I was difficult to please. And my response is, yeah, I'm difficult to please. That's how you get in the Cannes Film Festival. That's how you get Michael Moorcock to praise your book. That's how, that's what you want in the world, is you want it to be that it withstands that. And so that's, yeah. So again, for anyone who's a creative, the only reason I'm saying it again, it's not about me. It's just, you should want that. You should want someone to challenge you and be able to transcend it. And there's times someone will challenge you and they're wrong. And a lot of times maybe it's just a taste difference. Those things are all fine. It's the checking out. It's the accepting mediocrity that I have a problem with. You know what? It's good enough. Like, that's not what's great. So yes, John, you are one of my favorite people in the world, and I appreciate you immensely. And the end result was incredible. The movie looks so good on the big screen. And it was a lot of nights of John not sleeping that made those shots look like that. So Cheers to you with the water that I drink. What are we doing here? I'm so sniffly, and I wasn't when I started. I feel like I need Alka-Seltzer. My tongue twice. I said Deshazia wrong. Okay, this is perfect timing. These videos are so weird. I feel a little like a crazy person when I make these. Like, what if everybody on this was just ChatGPT? I'm just kind of ranting, and I'm not even funny like Bill Burr. I'm just ranting. So the thing that was really rewarding to me about making a book like Beautiful Macabre is that I've spent decades collecting these things. When you look at the Kickstarters that we make, it's no surprise to anyone who's ever been in my house or gallery. German Art Nouveau, there'll be Italian Art Nouveau. We're going to do Flowering Lines next year. Flowering Lines is going to get the treatment where it jumps from this old flowering lines, new flowering lines. That's happening next year. But the funny thing is, a lot of this Beautiful Macabre collection are just the things I couldn't sell. Like, they were too creepy. People would think, oh, it's a great poster, but nobody wanted to live with it. But now they're the things that I'm so thrilled to have. And so, that speaking of tooting your own horn, that's why the picture of me, is in the front, because I really wanted people to feel like I was walking you through this. I felt like it was very vain of me, but I was like, no, but if I was telling someone else what to do, that's what I would be saying, is this isn't just a collection of images, it's my collection. That's the cohesive thread. And so that is leading to an interesting collaboration that we're doing. I have a friend named James, whose artist name is Astral Eyes with a Z. And he has an Instagram, Astral Eyes, and an Instagram, Bibliomancers. And he's published a series of books based on his collections, which are old vintage paperbacks based on witchcraft, the occult, romance novels, the women running from houses genre. And so he's published them in this format. And we're going to give his books this treatment as well. So in January, we're doing the first two books, Spellbound and The Spectral Vision of Gothic Romance. And I really, really, really like this guy a lot. He and I are the same age. He's spent his time, instead of collecting posters, collecting these books. I'm sure it looks like an episode of Hoarders wherever he lives. But his stuff is great. His books are really cool. And I'm going to write an introduction, talk about my collecting in that world. And then we're going to have his book out. So there'll be expanded editions of his soft covers. So it's a little different in that I don't want to say campy in an insulting way, but it's a little more pop culture-y, not like, oh, this is like Jugendstil, the origin of something. It's just kind of a peek into that 60s, 70s, the kinds of paperbacks that would be at the checkout counter. For my age group, you remember being a kid and seeing like Chariots of the Gods and stuff next to Cosmopolitan. So these books are meant to be kind of in honor of that. Man, myth, and magic is a common thread in a lot of collections of people that I know. And that's kind of the way I'm looking at this, is we're kind of trying to give it the man, myth, magic treatment. So that's coming in January. And then after that is going to be Flowering Lines. And same thing. When we did that paperback, we were kind of just getting our feet wet. Did that paperback sell out? Is that sold out too? And I just love the creepy stuff so much that I always think that people kind of gloss over the beautiful stuff. But the thing that I wanted to do is a lot of the things that I had either collected or bought for the gallery were, kind of the thing that didn't always work was I wanted obscure stuff. I wanted not to just have a bunch of Mucha, but Marcel Lenoir and I love the Italian Art Nouveau. I love it so much, and nobody ever sees it. A lot of those posters, there may be fewer than 5 copies that exist in the world, so you just never see that stuff anywhere. So flowering lines, I try to give enough of the pretty things like Grasset and Mucha to make people happy. And that's just limited to things that we've owned. The reason you'll see Princess Hyacinth in there and Monte Carlo and things like that is those are just the posters that we happened to have had on display. And I don't go deeper into that as much as I look at the more esoteric, but equally beautiful, if not, I don't want to say more so, because Mucha's obviously great. I think it's just, I don't want to be like a guy that's like, oh, I liked that band before they were popular. I think it's just that when I look at the German Art Nouveau, for example, I just get, like, look at that Jugendstil 1897 cover. I mean, I'm using this as an example just because it's in front of my face here. Here, I'll screen share. I mean, look at this compared to, you got that? There we go. I mean, I love Mucha. Of course, Mucha is great, but look at those colors. It's so bold. It's so sexy. It's so passionate. Like, it's just, where's another great element? I guess really that's just, so anyway, I love the, I love the German stuff, and I do love the Italian stuff a lot. So anyway, that's the kind of stuff that'll be in flowering lines, some more obscure stuff. So to wrap up tonight, first of all, yeah, colors. I mean, so that's the downside to the Jugendstil books is that there's a lot of black and white illustration, and a lot of what makes that era so exciting are the psychedelic colors. But the line art is important. It's all important. So some of the great posters will be in the Flowering Lines book, but I would still get the Jugendstil book if you don't have it yet. The next salon is January 2nd. And there's a couple things. Holy cow, Kat. There's a list here. Kat keeps me on track. All right. Invite people to the salon Discord. Extensions of these talks that allow more equal discussion from members. Yes. I don't get in there as much as I want to and will the coming year. Every time I come in there, I spend money because someone has posted something that I need to then go watch or read. You have access as a Patreon member. So we did just start a Le Pater discussion channel and a Winter Favorites channel. The Winter Favorites channel I haven't seen yet. The Le Pater channel, I'll just say this really quickly. That book has got so many dimensions to it that I had this much that I just had to fit into there. So if you're if you're a fan of that book, if there's anything that you want to know, where did you learn about this? I'll tell you some sources to look at. If there's anything you want clarification on that's in the book, or even just to open up for wider discussion. If someone says, I thought this was interesting, there's so many brilliant people in there that know as much about this stuff as anybody that, you're going to get somebody chiming in and saying, oh, you should look at this, you should do this. So it's a great place for us to actually talk to each other instead of this, which is me kind of shouting like a crazy person on a street corner. But yeah, so please come to the Patreon. And thank you for being here. Yeah, you know, I know I say this every time, and I've said this before, but when we would have the gallery, after the gallery event shut down, there'd always be a handful of people that would hang out. And it was fun because it was like, oh, maybe you pull a drawer open or somebody wants to talk about something and you can get into a little more detail, or even just things like me talking about some of that stuff about attention to detail and integrity, the value of that in creativity. It's not stuff that I would talk about during an opening, but it might open up an interesting conversation, and then someone else who's a writer or someone else who's a project manager might have some insight. And so these are all things that are really great in the Discord. But I really appreciate being able to share some of these thoughts here. And I'm really here as a thank you to you guys. So whether you're watching this later or if you're in here now with me, us, if there's things you want to talk about or know more about, please message us, mention it in the chat. Temple of Medusa is frustrating and awkward and painful, but I'll address it. Because again, like it's meant to be like friends talking and just kind of moving everything forward in an interesting way. And if there's any ways that I can be of help in people understanding something better or appreciating something more, I want to do that. So January 2nd is when I'll see you guys next. We'll talk in the Discord. But thanks for coming to the last salon of 2024. I remember being a kid and looking at the movie poster for 2001, A Space Odyssey, and thinking, man, that is so far away. And then I remember in the 90s or whenever that came out, seeing the 2010 poster and thinking that is the far distant future. So I think it's hilarious that it's going to be 2025. That's very, very interesting that it moves so quickly. So thank you for being here. Yeah, let's talk in the Discord, and I'll see you guys very soon. And thank you for being here. And oh my gosh, there's all these comments. Oh yeah, Merry Christmas, Happy New Year, and we'll see you guys soon. All right, thank you.